Welcome to Forbiddenlovestorychannel. Step into the shadowed corners of my heart, where secrets simmer and forbidden desires flare into life. This is my story, a raw, unraveling confession of infidelity's tangled dance. My name is Charlotte Grayson, and at 38, I'm a lecturer in English literature at one of London's grandest universities. Each day, I face a sea of students, their eyes alight with restless dreams, their voices a chorus of untamed ambition. I've always thrived in their glow, a steady beacon in their chaotic world. But one scorching summer day, a single soul pierced through my carefully guarded walls, igniting a fire that consumed my reason and set my life ablaze. This isn't a tale of glory or shame. It's a fragile, fervent exploration of the wild emotions that bloom between two people, even when the world screams they're wrong. Will this flame destroy me, or will it forge something bolder, truer than I've ever known? Join me on this trembling, treacherous path and feel the heat for yourself. I'll never forget that day. The sun blazed outside, relentless and golden, pouring through the tall windows of the lecture hall at King's College. The air buzzed with the sticky heat of late August, thick with the nervous excitement of a new term. I stood at the front, chalk dust clinging to my fingers, scribbling notes on Wuthering Heights. A fitting irony, I'd later realise. The room thrummed with life as students shuffled in, their voices a chaotic symphony of whispers and laughter. I thrived in this chaos, each new face a fresh canvas, their minds ripe for inspiration. But then the heavy oak doors creaked open and he walked in. His name was Oliver Hart, a 20-year-old student with a presence that seized the air. Tall and lean, he moved with a quiet, defiant grace, his dark blonde hair catching the sunlight in reckless waves. His eyes, sharp, hazel and piercing, locked onto mine as he claimed a seat at the back. There was something untamed in that gaze, a flicker of boldness that sent a jolt through me, electric and unbidden. I gripped the chalk tighter, my voice faltering as I began, "Good morning, I'm Charlotte Grayson, your literature lecturer." The words felt mechanical, hollow against the sudden thrum in my chest. The lecture unfolded smoothly enough. Students scribbled notes, asked timid questions. But Oliver's stare burned into me. Every time I glanced up, there he was, unwavering, his pen moving with purpose across his notebook. His intensity unnerved me, a silent challenge that tugged at something deep and dormant. I fought to focus, to drown out the wild pulse racing beneath my calm exterior, but his presence lingered, heavy and inescapable. When the hour ended, I gathered my books, my hands trembling faintly, and made for the door. But his voice stopped me cold. "Miss Grayson." It was smooth, low, and laced with curiosity. I turned, and there he stood in the corridor, his frame silhouetted against the afternoon light streaming through the arched windows. Up close, his eyes shimmered with a daring warmth. "Could I ask you about today's lecture?" he said, stepping nearer, close enough for me to catch the faint scent of cedar and summer on him. My breath hitched. "Of course," I managed, my voice quivering despite my best efforts. "What's your name?" "Oliver Hart," he replied, extending a hand. His grip was firm, his skin warm against mine, and that simple touch sparked something reckless inside me. His questions came fast, sharp, insightful probes about Heathcliff's torment and Cathy's wild heart. He wasn't just clever, he was alive with a passion for words that mirrored my own. We stood there, lost in discussion, the corridor fading into a blur as an invisible thread tightened between us. "Thank you, Miss Grayson," he said at last, his smile soft yet searing. "That was illuminating." He lingered a moment longer, then turned and walked away, leaving me rooted to the spot, my heart hammering with a strange, exhilarating ache. I knew then I was in trouble. I shouldn't feel this, couldn't feel this for a student. I had a life, a husband, a career I'd fought for, but Oliver's voice, his gaze, His electric curiosity, they burrowed into me, relentless and haunting. That night, as I sat in my quiet Hampstead flat, the city's hum muffled beyond the windows. I couldn't shake him. His image danced in my mind, those hazel eyes, that daring spark, and my pulse quickened with every fleeting thought. I tried to bury it, to focus on my husband, James, asleep beside me, oblivious to the storm brewing in my soul. But something fierce had awakened, a hunger I couldn't name, and it terrified me as much as it thrilled me. Oliver Hart had slipped into my world, and I was already teetering on the edge of something dangerous, something alive. The days after that first encounter stretched into a restless blur, each one pulling me deeper into a current I couldn't resist. Oliver Hart had planted a seed in my soul, and it bloomed with a ferocity that left me breathless. Our conversations, once confined to the safe edges of lecture halls, began to spill over, tentative at first, then bold and unyielding. What started as a flicker of curiosity flared into something undeniable, a magnetic pull that defied every rule I'd ever clung to. I was a lecturer, a wife, a woman bound by duty, yet with him, I felt the stirrings of a self I'd forgotten, wild, alive, and achingly free. It began innocently enough. After each lecture, he'd linger, his footsteps echoing in the emptying hall as he approached with questions that danced beyond the pages of Wuthering Heights or Jane Eyre. His voice, smooth and deliberate, wove through the air, unravelling my composure. "What do you think love really means, Miss Grayson?" he'd ask, his hazel eyes glinting with a challenge that made my pulse stutter. I'd answer, my words steady but my heart a frantic drumbeat, and soon our exchanges stretched longer, 5 minutes, then 10, then 20. The corridor outside my classroom became our unspoken sanctuary, its stone walls absorbing the quiet thrill of our growing bond. I tried to fight it. Every glance from him was a spark, every word a flame licking at the edges of my resolve. I'd catch myself staring as he scribbled notes, his fingers deft and sure, or when he tilted his head in thought, sunlight catching the reckless waves of his hair. My mind screamed warnings. This is wrong, this is dangerous. But my heart, that traitor, thrummed with a reckless joy I couldn't silence. At home, James moved through our flat like a shadow, his presence familiar yet distant, his evenings swallowed by legal briefs and late-night calls. I'd sit by the window, the London skyline a muted glow, and Oliver's face would haunt me, those piercing eyes, that daring smile, until sleep became a battlefield of longing and guilt. Then came the invitation that shattered my fragile restraint. It was a Friday, the week's lectures fading into the hum of a city unwinding. I was gathering my things, the classroom quiet save for the rustle of papers, when Oliver appeared at the door. "Miss Grayson," he said, his tone soft but edged with intent, "would you join me for coffee? There's a place near Russell Square, quiet, tucked away." His gaze held mine, steady and unapologetic, and I felt the air thicken with unspoken promises. I should have said no. I should have turned away, clung to the safety of my title, my vows, but my voice betrayed me, trembling as it slipped out. Yes, I'd like that. The cafe was a hidden gem, its walls lined with faded books and dim lamps casting a warm, conspiratorial glow. We settled into a corner, the leather seats creaking beneath us, the murmur of jazz weaving through the air. I'd arrived early, my hands twisting in my lap as I battled the storm inside, judgment clashing with a breathless, giddy anticipation. When Oliver walked in, my heart lurched. He wore a dark jacket over a crisp white shirt, his hair tousled as if he'd run his hands through it, and that smile, soft, searing, lit something deep within me. "Hello, Charlotte," he said, dropping the formalities with a boldness that sent a shiver down my spine. "Thank you for coming." We ordered coffee, the steam curling between us like a fragile bridge. At first, we danced around safe topics, books we adored, films that moved us, music that stirred the soul. His laughter was a melody, low and rich, and I felt my tension melt, replaced by a warmth that spread through me like wildfire. But then he leaned closer, his voice dropping to a serious velvet hush. "Charlotte, I want to know you, not just as my lecturer, but as you. The real you." His words struck me like lightning, raw and disarming, and I felt a dam break inside. "I haven't felt this alive in years," I confessed, my eyes locked on his, the truth spilling out before I could stop it. "My life's been a script, polished, predictable, and you've torn it apart." My voice quivered, but I couldn't look away. He reached across the table, his hand brushing mine, and that touch, simple, electric, ignited a spark that raced through me. Our fingers lingered, then clasped, and I felt the world tilt, the boundaries I'd clung to dissolving in the heat of his gaze. "Charlotte," he murmured, his tone tender yet fierce. "You're more than a title to me. I want to be near you, to understand you." The coffee arrived, a fleeting interruption, but the air between us had shifted, charged, alive with something unspoken. We talked on, our words weaving a tapestry of dreams and fears, his maturity startling me, his sincerity piercing me. As the cafe emptied, we stepped into the night, the London streets bathed in a starry hush. We walked slowly, the silence between us thick with meaning, until he stopped, turning to me under a flickering street lamp. "Charlotte," he said, his voice a soft thunder, "may I kiss you?" The question hung there, bold and vulnerable, and my heart answered before my mind could protest. I nodded, my breath catching as he stepped closer. His arms slid around me, warm and sure, pulling me into a space where nothing else existed. Our lips met, tentative at first, then hungry, a collision of longing and release. His warmth seeped into me, his hands firm against my back, and I melted into him. The kiss a torrent of everything we'd held back, passion, doubt, desire. When we parted, breathless and trembling, his eyes mirrored the storm in mine. "Charlotte," he whispered, his voice rough with emotion, "I don't know what's ahead, but I can't turn away from this." I pressed my forehead to his, my words a fragile vow. "Neither can I." That night marked a turning point, a line crossed with no retreat. We began meeting more often, stolen moments after lectures, quiet walks along the Thames, each encounter deepening the thread between us. Within the university's stone walls, I was Miss Grayson, composed and distant, but alone with him, I was Charlotte, unravelled, alive, consumed by a fire I couldn't quench. Every touch, every glance stoked it higher, and I felt myself slipping further from the life I'd known. James remained a ghost in my world, his late nights a silent gift, giving me space to chase this reckless joy. Yet beneath it all, guilt gnawed at me, a shadow I couldn't outrun. One evening, as the city glowed under a bruised sunset, Oliver took my hand and led me to a bench by the river. The water shimmered, a restless mirror to my soul, and he looked at me with a tenderness that stole my breath. "You've changed me," he said, his fingers tracing mine. "I never knew I could feel this much." Tears pricked my eyes, his words a balm to wounds I hadn't named. "You've woken me up," I replied, my voice thick with emotion. "But we have to be careful. If anyone knew—" He silenced me with a gentle touch, his resolve a quiet steel. "I'd risk it all for you," he said, and in his eyes I saw a promise that both terrified and thrilled me. We kissed again, the river whispering beside us, and I surrendered to the tide pulling me under. This was no longer a game, no fleeting spark. It was a force, fierce and unyielding, reshaping me with every stolen moment. I knew the path ahead was fraught, a tightrope over an abyss. But with Oliver beside me, I felt ready to walk it, heart pounding, soul ablaze, chasing a truth I couldn't deny. The deeper I fell into Oliver's orbit, the more my world split in two, a shimmering dream clashing with a gnawing dread. Every moment with him was a stolen treasure, a burst of light that warmed my soul, yet each one cast a shadow I couldn't escape. I was a lecturer by day, poised and unshakable, guiding students through the labyrinths of literature. But beneath that mask, I was a woman unraveling, tethered to a secret that pulsed with both ecstasy and shame. Oliver had become my air, my heartbeat, yet the life I'd built with James loomed like a storm cloud, heavy with unspoken truths I couldn't face. Our meetings grew bolder, yet cloaked in caution. The university's hallowed halls, with their echoing corridors and watchful eyes, forced us into a delicate dance of restraint. I'd catch his gaze across the lecture hall, a fleeting ember that set my skin aflame, but I'd turn away, my voice steady as I dissected Bronte or Austen. After class, we'd linger just long enough, his questions a pretext, my answers a shield, before slipping into the city's embrace. London became our refuge, its sprawling chaos a perfect veil. We'd meet in tucked-away corners, a quiet bench in Bloomsbury, a shadowy pub near Covent Garden, the air thick with the scent of rain and possibility. Each encounter was a tightrope walk, exhilarating and perilous. His touch, a brush of fingers, a hand resting briefly on mine, sent shivers racing through me, igniting a hunger I couldn't tame. We'd talk for hours, our voices weaving through the night, unraveling dreams and fears until the world shrank to just us. "You make me feel seen," he'd say, his hazel eyes glowing with a tenderness that pierced me. I'd smile, my heart swelling, and whisper back, "You make me feel alive." But beneath the joy, a current of guilt churned, dark and relentless. I'd return home to Hampstead, the flat silence save for James's soft breathing, and the weight of my betrayal would settle like lead in my chest. James was a constant, a steady anchor I'd once cherished. A lawyer swallowed by his work, he'd drift in late, his face etched with exhaustion, his words clipped and distracted. Our evenings had long since faded into a quiet routine, dinners shared in near silence. His focus lost to case files while I stared out at the city's restless glow. I'd loved him once, deeply, but that love had dulled. A faded painting I couldn't restore. Now, with Oliver's fire coursing through me, James felt like a ghost. A reminder of vows I was breaking, a life I was betraying. I'd lie beside him. My mind replaying Oliver's laughter, his warmth and guilt would claw at me, sharp and unyielding. Yet I couldn't stop. Oliver was a tide pulling me under, and I let myself drown. One evening, as autumn painted London in hues of amber and crimson, he suggested a walk through Hyde Park. The air was crisp, the sky streaked with a fading sun, and the park stretched before us, vast and serene. We found a secluded spot beneath a sprawling chestnut tree, its branches a canopy shielding us from the world. He took my hand, his grip firm and warm, and I felt my defences crumble. "You're beautiful," he murmured, his voice a soft thunder that rumbled through me. "Every time I'm with you, I forget everything else." I leaned into him, my breath catching as his arms wrapped around me. "You've turned my world upside down," I confessed, my words trembling with truth. "I shouldn't want this, but I do, more than anything." We kissed, slow and deep, the taste of him a forbidden sweetness that drowned out the whispers of conscience. His hands traced my back, gentle yet possessive, and I melted into the moment. The park fading into a blur of leaves and dusk. It was reckless, intoxicating, a stolen slice of paradise I couldn't let go. But paradise came with a price. At home, the flat felt colder, the silence heavier. James would ask absent-minded questions. "How was your day?" And I'd force a smile, my voice a brittle mask. "Fine," I'd say, while my mind replayed Oliver's touch, his words, the way he looked at me like I was his entire world. The deception gnawed at me, a quiet ache that grew sharper with each lie. I'd catch my reflection in the mirror, eyes bright with secrets, cheeks flushed with guilt, and wonder who I'd become. A woman in love, yes, but also a traitor, teetering on the edge of a precipice I couldn't unsee. One night, James stayed late at the office, his absence a silent gift I seized without hesitation. I texted Oliver, my fingers trembling as I typed, "Meet me at the flat." He arrived under cover of darkness, the city's hum a distant lullaby. I opened the door, and his presence filled the space. Vital, electric, a force I couldn't resist. We sat on the sofa, wine glasses in hand, the air between us crackling with unspoken need. "I hate hiding," he said, his voice low and fierce. "I want you, all of you, not just these stolen pieces." His words struck me, a blade of truth I couldn't dodge. "I hate it too," I admitted, my eyes stinging with unshed tears. "But it's all I can give right now." He reached for me, pulling me close, and I surrendered to the storm of him. We kissed, desperate and greedy, the wine forgotten as our hands sought each other, mapping a connection that transcended words. The flat, once a sanctuary of routine, became a crucible, burning away the lies I told myself. I wanted him, fiercely, wholly, and in that moment, guilt was a distant echo, drowned by the roar of my heart. When he left, the silence crashed back, deafening and cruel. I stood by the window, watching his figure vanish into the night and the weight of my choices pressed down. I was living two lives, one a polished facade, the other a blazing truth, and the strain was fracturing me. James would return soon, oblivious to the chaos I'd invited in, and I'd greet him with a smile that masked the tempest within. I knew this couldn't last, this delicate web of secrecy and stolen moments. The tighter I clung to Oliver, the more I felt the threads unraveling, pulling me toward a reckoning I couldn't avoid. Every night I'd lie awake, the city's pulse a faint heartbeat beyond the glass. Oliver's face would rise unbidden, his daring smile, his tender strength, and I'd feel the pull, relentless and sweet. But James's shadow lingered too, a quiet accusation I couldn't shake. I was caught, suspended between duty and desire, love and betrayal, and the tension was a vice around my soul. I wanted to be free, to choose without fear, but the cost loomed large, my career, my marriage, my very self. Yet with Oliver, I felt a truth I'd never known, a fire that burned away the numbness. And so I stayed, trapped in this fragile, forbidden dance, knowing each step brought me closer to the edge. The secret I'd cradled so fiercely couldn't stay buried forever. It was a fragile thing, a flame flickering in the dark, and I'd known, deep down, beneath the haze of passion, that its light would one day burn too bright to hide. With Oliver, I'd built a world of stolen glances and whispered promises, a sanctuary woven from defiance and desire. But reality has a way of crashing through, sharp and merciless. And when it did, it tore my life apart with a force I couldn't withstand. The unravelling began on a quiet evening, the kind where London hums softly under a blanket of dusk. I'd spent the day drifting through lectures, my mind tethered to Oliver, his voice, his touch, the way he made the air around me crackle. James had been distant lately, his late nights at the office stretching longer, leaving me free to sink deeper into the tide, pulling me toward Oliver. That night, I'd invited him over again, the flat a cocoon for our clandestine joy. We'd laughed over a simple dinner, our hands brushing as we shared wine, the tension between us simmering into something tender and fierce. He'd left just before midnight, his parting kiss a lingering ember on my lips, and I'd stood by the window, watching him vanish into the shadowed streets, my heart swollen with a love I couldn't name. But the peace shattered when James came home. I heard the key turn in the lock earlier than expected, a sound that sliced through the stillness like a blade. He stepped inside, his face carved with a grimness I'd never seen, his eyes cold and searching. My stomach twisted, a sickening lurch, as he dropped his briefcase and held up his phone, the screen glowing with a message I couldn't yet read. "Charlotte," he said, his voice a low, trembling thunder. "We need to talk." I sank onto the sofa, my legs unsteady, as he crossed the room and thrust the phone toward me. There it was, a text from Oliver. Simple but damning. "Miss you already. Can't wait to see you tomorrow." The words glared up at me, stark and accusing, and I felt the air rush from my lungs. My secret, my fragile, blazing truth, lay exposed in his hands. "What does this mean?" James demanded, his tone sharp with a pain that cut deeper than anger. I opened my mouth, grasping for a lie, but nothing came, only a hollow, choking silence. "It's not what you think," I stammered at last, my voice frail against the storm brewing in his eyes. But he cut me off, his words a whip cracking through the air. "Not what I think. You're cheating on me. Charlotte, how could you?" His voice broke, raw and jagged, and I saw the betrayal etch itself into his features, a wound I'd inflicted without warning. Tears welled in my eyes, hot and unstoppable as the weight of my choices crashed down. "I'm sorry," I whispered, the words choking me. "I didn't mean for this to happen. I fell in love with him. I couldn't stop it." James staggered back, his face twisting with disbelief and anguish. "Love," he spat, the word bitter on his tongue. "I thought we were happy. I thought we had something real. How could you do this?" His voice trembled, a mix of fury and heartbreak that tore at me. I wanted to reach for him, to erase the pain I'd caused, but my hands stayed frozen, useless against the wreckage I'd wrought. "I'm sorry," I repeated, a broken refrain, tears streaming down my cheeks. "I never wanted to hurt you." He stood there, silent for an agonizing stretch, his chest heaving as he wrestled with the storm inside. Then, his voice dropped, cold and resolute. "I need time," he said. "I'm leaving for a few days. Figure out what you want. Charlotte, because I can't do this right now." He grabbed his coat and walked out, the door slamming shut with a finality that echoed through the flat. I collapsed onto the floor, my knees buckling, the silence swallowing me whole. The world I'd known, the steady rhythm of my marriage, the illusion of control, lay in ruins around me, and I was alone with the shards. The days that followed were a fog of despair. I couldn't face Oliver, couldn't bear to hear his voice when my own was drowned in guilt and confusion. I texted him once, a curt, "I need space," and then shut off my phone, retreating into the hollow shell of my flat. James's absence was a gaping wound, his words replaying in my mind like a relentless dirge. I'd betrayed him, shattered the trust we'd built, and the truth of it gnawed at me, relentless and cruel. I wandered the rooms, tracing the edges of a life that no longer fit. Our books on the shelf, the photos of happier times, all mocking me with their quiet permanence. I tried to piece myself together, to sift through the chaos of my heart. Oliver was a fire in my veins, a truth I couldn't unfeel, but James was my past, my anchor, and letting him go meant dismantling everything I'd known. I stood by the window, the city sprawling beyond the glass, its lights blurred through my tears. I'd wanted freedom, passion, a love that shook me awake. But at what cost? My career hung in the balance, my reputation a fragile thread, and now my marriage was ash. I felt lost, adrift in a sea of my own making, with no shore in sight. One morning, as rain streaked the windows, I sat at the kitchen table, a cold cup of tea trembling in my hands. The doorbell rang, a sharp intrusion, and I opened it to find James standing there, his face weary but calm. "We need to finish this," he said, stepping inside, his voice steady but laced with sorrow. I nodded, my throat tight, and we sat across from each other, the distance between us vast and unbridgeable. "I've thought about it," he began, his eyes meeting mine with a quiet resolve. "I can't forgive this, Charlotte. I can't live with the betrayal. I'm filing for divorce." His words landed like a stone, heavy and final, and I felt my heart fracture. "I understand," I whispered, tears spilling anew. "I'm so sorry it came to this." He nodded, his expression softening with a trace of the man I'd once loved. "I'll always remember the good times," he said, his voice breaking slightly. "But this is the end." He left the papers on the table and walked out, leaving me in a silence that roared with loss. I sat there, alone, the divorce looming like a dark horizon. The truth had broken free, and there was no turning back. Oliver was still out there, a beacon in the storm, but I didn't know how to reach for him, or if I even could. My life was in tatters, and I was the architect of its ruin. The divorce papers sat signed and final, a quiet epitaph to the life I'd once known. James was gone, his absence a hollow echo in the flat, and I stood amid the wreckage of my choices, a woman unmoored. The storm had passed, leaving me battered but breathing, and in its wake I faced a void, vast, daunting, yet tinged with a fragile hope. Oliver remained a constant, a flame that hadn't dimmed, and though my world lay in ruins, his presence whispered of a chance to rise again. This was no fairy tale redemption, but a gritty, tender rebuilding, one step at a time. I met him days after James left for good, the weight of my confession still clinging to me like damp fog. I'd invited him to the flat, my voice trembling as I asked him to come. When he stepped through the door, his eyes searched mine, soft, steady, brimming with a concern that pierced my defences. We sat on the sofa, the space between us charged with unspoken fears, and I let the truth spill out, raw and unfiltered. "James knows," I said, my words heavy with exhaustion. "He's gone. We're divorcing. My life's a mess, Oliver, and I don't know where to go from here." He took my hand, his grip warm and unwavering, and I felt a spark flicker through the numbness. "Charlotte," he murmured, his voice a balm against my wounds. "I'm here. I know it's hard, but you're not alone. I love you, and we'll get through this. Together." His words wrapped around me, gentle yet fierce, and I leaned into him, tears spilling as I let myself believe. We held each other, the silence thick with promise, and in that embrace, I glimpsed a lifeline, a chance to rebuild from the ashes. We left the flat behind, its walls too steeped in ghosts, and found a new home, a small weathered cottage on the outskirts of London, nestled among whispering trees and wildflower fields. The city's clamour faded there, replaced by a stillness that soothed my frayed edges. The cottage was modest, its wooden beams creaking with character, its windows spilling golden light across threadbare rugs. It became our sanctuary, a blank canvas where we could paint a future unshackled by the past. Moving in was a quiet ritual, boxes unpacked, laughter shared over chipped mugs. And with each day, the ache in my chest softened, replaced by a tentative peace. Life with Oliver was a revelation, a tapestry woven from simple joys and fierce devotion. We'd wake to birdsong, the dawn painting the sky in soft pinks, and linger over coffee, our conversations drifting from poetry to plans. He'd tease me about my endless books, his smile a bright, unguarded thing, and I'd feel my heart swell, light where it had once been heavy. We walked the fields at dusk, hands clasped, the air cool and sweet, and I marvelled at how he grounded me, his quiet strength a steady pulse beneath my chaos. Guilt still lingered, a faint shadow, but his love was a tide, washing it away with every touch, every whispered word. One evening, as summer draped the cottage in warmth, we sat on the rickety porch, the horizon ablaze with a sinking sun. I leaned against him, his arm a comforting weight around me, and felt a gratitude so deep it stole my breath. "You've changed me," he said, his voice low and earnest, his fingers tracing mine. "I'm better with you, happier, whole." I turned to him, my eyes meeting his, and smiled through the sting of tears. "You've saved me," I replied, my words trembling with truth. "I was lost, and you brought me back. The days stretched into weeks, then months, each one a brick in the foundation we built. Challenges came, whispers from colleagues, the sting of judgment. But together, we faced them, our bond a shield against the world. I taught my classes with renewed fire, Oliver's encouragement a quiet hum in my soul. And he pursued his own path, his passion for words mirroring mine. We were partners, flawed and fierce, carving out a life that felt honest, raw, and ours. The cottage grew around us, filled with books and laughter, a testament to a love that had weathered the storm. Standing there, under that endless sky, I knew we'd found something rare, a beginning born from endings, a flame tempered by trial. The past would always linger, a quiet scar. But with Oliver beside me, I was ready to face whatever lay ahead, my heart open, my spirit alight. Time wove our story into something enduring, a tapestry of scars and triumphs that only grew richer with each passing season. Oliver and I had carved a life from the rubble, our cottage a haven where love took root and flourished. The chaos of the past faded into a distant hum, replaced by a harmony that felt both fragile and unbreakable. One summer evening, as the sky burned with a golden dusk, he turned to me on our porch, his eyes alight with a quiet fire. "Charlotte," he said, his voice steady yet trembling with depth, "I want you forever. Will you marry me?" He knelt, a simple ring glinting in his hand, and my heart surged, tears spilling as I whispered, "Yes." Our wedding was a whisper of beauty, held by a serene lake just beyond London's reach, its waters mirroring a forest of emerald and gold. I walked toward him in a flowing dress, the breeze carrying the scent of pine, my soul brimming with a joy so fierce it stole my breath. He stood waiting, his smile a beacon, and we spoke vows that bound us, raw, honest promises to weather every storm. When he slipped the ring onto my finger, the world shimmered, brighter and warmer, and our kiss sealed a future forged from the ashes of before. Friends gathered, their laughter a soft chorus, and we danced under a canopy of stars, his arms a steady haven as I surrendered to the rhythm of us. The honeymoon followed, a quiet escape to a coastal hideaway where the sea sang and the sunsets bled crimson. We walked barefoot on the shore, hands entwined, the waves lapping at our feet as we dreamed aloud. Back home, our life unfolded, imperfect, vibrant, a dance of trust and tenderness. Oliver became my rock, my confidant, his love a light that guided me through every shadow. Years passed, and our bond deepened, a flame that never wavered, illuminating a path of shared horizons and unspoken strength. One night, as we sat by the lake where we'd wed, the stars above us silent witness, I looked at him. His face etched with the years, his eyes still fierce with devotion, and felt a gratitude that defied words. "We made it," I murmured, my hand in his. He squeezed it, his voice a soft echo. "We did. And I'd choose you again, every time." Our story wasn't flawless, but it was ours, a testament to a love that defied the odds, a fire that burned steady through the dark. To you, who've walked this tangled path with me, thank you. If my journey stirs something in you, share your own story below. Let's weave a tapestry of hearts together. Subscribe if you feel the spark, and may you find your own flame, wild, true, and enduring. Here's to love, to courage, and to every beautiful moment ahead. Wishing you light and strength always.